Unless you've worked in retail, you've probably never heard of the Net Promoter Survey score. But if you've bought anything in the last 20 years, there's a very good chance you've contributed to it. These are those 1 out of 10, how likely are you to recommend this service to a friend surveys. In 2003, business strategist Fred Reichheld wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review that described a methodology that he saw developed at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. The company's customers were given a survey with just 2 questions. Rate your experience on a scale of 1 to 10, and how likely are you to recommend Enterprise Rent-A-Car to a friend, also on a scale of 1 to 10. This was much simpler than most customer survey methodologies in use at the time. Reichheld's research showed, though, that these scores were a very good predictor of how likely a branch was to go on to succeed. And if there's one type of research you can trust, it's the kind commissioned by a company trying to prove to you that you should buy their product. The survey takes customer responses and puts them into 3 categories. Detractors, who give their experience a score of 1 through 6, passives, who rate their experience a 7 or an 8, and promoters, who give their experience a 9 or a 10. The survey then throws away the passives, takes the number of promoters, and subtracts that from the number of detractors to produce a Net Promoter Score. The theory behind this is that passives don't really care. They're not going to tell their friends about the service, and they're not especially likely to use that service again in the future. But the people at both extremes, the people who had a really good experience and the people who had a really bad experience, are the ones who are going to go and tell other people about that. So organizations should keep track of these 2 things, and they should try to create promoters. That's the theory, at least. Some organizations who use this score have modified it to be 1 through 5 instead of 1 through 10. And then other companies just ripped off the idea entirely. Many companies use the Net Promoter Survey, and so it's become ubiquitous in fields like retail. It's influenced everything in our lives. Everything is now driven by how likely you are to recommend, either on a scale of 1 to 5 or on a scale of 1 to 10. The concept makes sense, and when implemented right, many companies swear by its efficacy. But systems like this can also be set up to work as a tool for subterfuge. In a 2019 Wall Street Journal article, Reichheld asked for his thoughts about using NPS to decide things like whether or not employees earn bonuses, was quoted as saying, "That's completely bogus. I had no idea how people would mess with the score to bend it to make it serve their selfish objectives." The 2019 Wall Street Journal article reports, "The results are easy to manipulate, whether intentionally or unintentionally. On Reddit posts, Best Buy employees share tips and tricks to improve NPS, which the company derives from a random sample of customers. They said they can get better results when they explain to customers how the scoring works, or tell them their compensation is connected to the result. Some said they remind only the happiest customers to take the survey. When horrible NPS comments would come in, the management would rail at employees," said Alan Sabato, a former Best Buy employee who worked at a Las Vegas store for 3 years until he quit last year. Mr. Sabato recalled an instance when his store team received a bad score because a customer had a poor experience at a different Best Buy location. "I've worked retail and service jobs where employee performance was scored this way, and I can tell you, that's exactly what I saw. NPS was gamed in a way that made it totally meaningless. Employees who were manipulating the system were at an advantage over those who did not, and their scores were compared as if that wasn't happening. It didn't really even matter what the reality was. They were going to be judged on these numbers, so these were the numbers that had to be improved. Just the same as it gives employers the ability to manufacture a reason to fire someone, they can look the other way on this in order to produce reason to promote one person over another. It should come as no surprise that executives do it too. In earnings calls, companies like Delta Airlines and Best Buy have touted their improvements to their company-wide NPS. That can hide the reality of their performance behind phony numbers. In retail, it's often sent to customers to rate their experience both with the location they visited and the employee they were helped by. When customers are given to employees randomly, that can be a useful metric, but if management is able to predict who will be a detractor and who will be a promoter, and they set up things to consistently give one employee, those potential detractors, they can manufacture phony cause to fire that employee. They'd say something like, "Look how bad your NPS results are. Obviously, you're not a committed employee." Companies who have become addicted to NPS also use it internally. They use the same survey methodology to poll their employees on their experience working at the company. When surveys like this allow employees to write comments, employees can open themselves up to retaliation if their boss can identify them by their writing style. That boss is also likely measured by their employees' NPS results, so firing those people who are detractors will push their score up. And some have questioned the survey's basic premise. A 2018 article, also published in the Harvard Business Review, argues that when their firm sent out both an NPS-style survey and an alternative that they devised to focus more on actual consumer behavior rather than just asking if respondents would recommend the brand to a friend, they found that while results line up in some cases, in others they were way off. They suggest that this is because people's experiences and the way that they react to them can't be easily categorized into those three categories. Human beings tend to have more complicated relationships with brands, and their opinion of that brand doesn't necessarily correlate with how likely they are to come back. I know me personally, I shop at stores that I hate all the time. Sometimes the biggest competitor is the only one that can give you the best price, or maybe they're the only one in that location or that's open at that time. So I hate it, but sometimes I just suck it up and go there. As with all surveys, a lot depends on how they're constructed. If you ask bad questions, you won't get useful output. The problem with NPS, and what its inventor called bogus, is that it incentivizes people to manufacture fake numbers. Like a lot of polling, it suffers from a failure to understand the target population and how they're going to respond. Political pollsters are faced with similar judgment calls that they have to make. Suppose they're doing a survey to find out who voters of each party want for president, but after doing the survey, only 1,000 Democrats picked up the phone, but 2,500 Republican voters picked up. How is that pollster supposed to adjust these results to get an idea of what voters across the country think? Any realistic way requires a little bit of editorialization based on what the pollster expected going in. If they're really good at this, they won't be too biased by that, but it's a hard thing to avoid. Once you start seeing the NPS numbers that you want, you stop checking to make sure that the data is accurate and being collected in a way that doesn't bias the numbers one way or the other. Quite frequently, when Net Promoter Scores are used, everybody involved has incentives to bias the numbers one way or the other. So what do you think? Have you ever taken one of these surveys? You probably have, but did you realize that it could be used in this way? Would you take them again? And also, let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 how likely you are to recommend this video to a friend down there in the comments. And yes, I will be deleting anything lower than an 8. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, click the like button. Please consider subscribing because that helps me grow this channel and makes me make more videos. And it just, makes me feel fulfilled as a person. You can help my soul grow by clicking that subscribe button. All right, thanks. Bye.